How do we evoke the identity of an architect or brand? Designers and creatives develop distinct codes that reflect their creative outlooks, spanning everything from typography and tone of voice to signature structures, imagery, forms, and colour. Deploying such tools in a way that's sensitive to one's creative outlook and vision can instantly summon the spirit of a product, person, or place. This is Monocle on Design.
Understanding we all see color differently, we all express color differently, and Pantone originally had been a color card company.
The spirit of Kahn you can see, and I think that is also an interesting aspect. These are all young, fresh architects.
This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nic and Grace. On today's program, why self-expression is the colour trend of 2026 with Pantone's Laurie Pressman. We visit the Louis Kahn Foundation to hear about their plans for a new centre dedicated to the architect, plus a reflection on collaborations and creative partnerships. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. I'm joined in the studio by my colleague Grace Charlton. Grace, what have you seen? Where have you been? Just those standard questions.
I was in Milan doing a story for the upcoming issue of Confect, Monocle's sister magazine, so keep an eye out for that. It was about biophilic design. But otherwise, I've been in London, and you've been on Instagram.
Yeah, I've added that. I haven't been anywhere this week. I've put the only destination I've been is on Instagram. But I wanted to use that as a jumping off point because, you know, when I'm not travelling and finding inspiration there, I am doom scrolling in my bed at home recovering, which is how I nearly got tricked by this Miu Miu Smeg collaboration that landed on my feed. I thought it was real. You've since seen it. And I wanted to use this as a jumping off point for talking about, I guess, brands collaborating together on projects. I mean, what are your thoughts? Firstly, let's break down this fake Miu Miu Smeg collaboration.
Yeah, you sent this to me and it made me think AI is getting way too good because it really picked up on the house codes of Miu Miu and sort of translated these to home appliances, including like a cake mixer, like a batter mixer, a toaster and a coffee machine in the classic Miu Miu colours of like baby blue and yellow and blush pink. And it has the logo on top of it. It looks so real. It's crazy.
But this is what I find fascinating. It's like, okay, I kind of have mixed feelings on this because Smeg on its own, and I know we're talking about a fake thing right now, but Smeg on its own has some really clear, distinct brand codes. We're talking like that polished metal. We're talking this kind of like almost retro feel to it, evoking, I guess, the heyday of kitchen appliances, for want of a better expression. So it has its own really strong codes. So then to see Miu Miu's codes applied to that, it's kind of funny. And it's like, can we not just have things stand alone? Do you think this is a good thing?
Brands collaborating is just a classic marketing trick. That's often how I feel about it. It's sort of like, you know, it makes sense. It's like you take the brand loyalty that people have for Smeg and the brand loyalty that people have for Miu Miu and you combine them and suddenly it's going to be like exponential sales or something. It's like when Charlie XCX like collabs with Lorde and it's like, oh my God, this whole moment and these two people coming together and like how iconic. I think brands have maybe taken it a little bit too far.
What are some like recent ones that you've seen that you have strong feelings, good or bad, on?
I really enjoyed 50 Cent, famous rapper of In the Club, one of the best songs of the 21st century. He made a cognac bottle in partnership with Lalique, which is a very iconic like French glass brand. And I actually think it was good. And you know what's good about this collaboration? It's unexpected.
I feel like that does make sense. Like I can see 50 Cent drinking cognac.
Oh, for sure. Like in the club. Like totally. No. Literally. Like it makes so much sense and it's funny. I just want to be tickled. You know what I mean? Like I want to see something and be like, oh, that's kind of funny.
When you see the advertising campaign for it, it makes total sense. The image shows 50, or Fiddy as I like to call him, amazing diamond bracelet on, lighting a cigar with a bottle of cognac and a very full glass. And it feels right. The other one I saw recently that I wasn't so much of a fan of was Mooi, which is his Dutch furniture brand, collaborating with Robbie Williams. And it just felt a little bit... When I think of Robbie Williams, I don't think of armchairs.
It just felt unnecessary. I'm a really big fan of Robbie Williams.
What's your favourite Robbie Williams song?
No, obviously the best Robbie Williams song is Feel. But he made this armchair for Mooi and it just seems a little bit unnecessary and I don't really know who would want it in their homes.
I think if you're a fan of Robbie Williams, you're maybe just buying his records, not necessarily his armchair. I guess circling back to brand codes, and maybe this is why the Robbie Williams one doesn't work. Armchairs don't necessarily feel like a Robbie Williams code. And I think this is also coming to trademark colours. It's going to segue nicely into our first interview, which is all about colour, and so many brands use, I guess, trademark colours. I mean, I think Bottega Veneta green, it seemed to be everywhere a few years ago, and whenever anyone was talking about this particular shade, they would be referencing Bottega. I think Tiffany blue, picked back in 1845, I found out. It's this light medium robin's egg blue colour. That was after a little bit of Googling, but that's apparently the description of it, and it's Pantone number 1837. Somebody that would know a little bit about this colour, or at least certainly about Pantone, is the Vice President of the Pantone Colour Institute, Laurie Pressman.
Monocle's head of radio, Tom Edwards, and editor-in-chief Andrew Tuck caught up with Laurie at this year's edition of the World Government Summit in Dubai. They began by asking her what the core mission of Pantone is.
Well, the story came to be written when we think about where we start. When we work with a brand or a product, or in this case, the World Government Summit, it was a client who was coming to us to enhance their message, right? Color is a language. Color subliminally conveys a unique message and meaning. And looking at the salient qualities and the characteristics of what the World Government Summit represented, all the things that fed into what they were trying to accomplish, and from there defining a color that best was able to articulate that message.
And tell me, we did a story some years ago, which I recall now. In fact, I think we even came to see Pantone.
You did.
Which was about.
You did.
Which was.
You did. It was fabulous. I love Monocle. I was thrilled.
Because it was about actually a kind of global shortage of blues. That every brand wants a blue, and it is a WGS blue.
Yes.
When you begin to find a color that can be associated just with one brand, is it tricky finding another blue, or a blue that they can own to be their WGS blue?
It can be. It certainly can be when we think about the family of blues, especially because it is the most universally, well, let's just say one of the most universally loved colors. You know, you have the blues, you have the reds, each conveying different feelings and different messages. But the trick is, yes, to find something that's distinguished, distinguishable, distinctive enough from another blue, let's say, so that it can create a unique presence, and also one that fits with the message that a brand or a company, or in this case, the World Government Summit, was looking to articulate. It's always tricky.
Now, I was just say, at Monocle, when I ever go over to the art director's desk, normally sat behind him is a whole kind of book of Pantone colours that he's thinking about. The cover of the issue, he's taking that Pantone colour off to send it to the printers to make sure it's colour matched. It's an extraordinary, almost like old-fashioned, in some senses, method, but designers won't back away from it. They love what Pantone does. Just tell us, what is the business of Pantone then? And because that's just one snapshot of it. It's authentic colour matching in a sense. I know you've been going since the 50s, but what is the core business that you do then?
So the core business is really the color standardization. It was the realization of Larry Herbert when he created Pantone of understanding we all see color differently, we all express color differently, and Pantone originally had been a color card company. And the frustration experienced by a designer who was looking for brick red, their perception of brick red, the printer printing what he thought brick red was, and the mismatched expectations, and saying, how do we streamline this process so that we have a common color language that we can all objectively use? So that started at the foundation. But what was really interesting is the following year, a paint company coming to him, and I don't remember if it was Eastern Airlines, but it was a US-based airline, and saying, my color of my tail of the plane is one on the ground, and it's a different blue in the air. Can you help us to make sure that there's no metamerism here, because it was the light affecting the appearance of the color? So can you formulate a color that can be achievable no matter the environment that it appears in? So ergo, the first area of business that we walked into following the origination of the Pantone standard guides was custom color and formulating all of these different colors. And a lot of the areas we've walked into is as a result of people saying, well, they're a color company. They can help us with all of these different things. So the foundation is still the color guides, But at the same time, when we think about Pantone today, it's the digital language. It's the languages that cross fashion and home and interiors and plastics and industrial design and color cosmetics. It's all the trend work that we do. Pantone Color Institute was started in the 80s, all on the basis of color preference studies, so psychology research. Today, it's a global team of people where we work with so many different brands around the world for colors for brand visual identity, just as we did with World Government Summit, as well as color for product application. So anything that color touches, we're there.
Just one tiny thing there, because you should be a B2B business, but the funny thing, it is a brand. You came in with the coffee mug.
Yes, and that is, so here you go. Pantone started what was originally called Pantone Universe in 2000, which is when I started at Pantone. And it was this whole idea that we're going to hire designers to design a product line outside of their universe. So you had Office, Pantone, this Pantone Office, and there was a whole thing with stationery, and a whole thing with travel universe, all these different universes. And that was our move into consumer. But at the same time, I think Pantone always had their eye on the consumer, because a lot of the programs that we do is also geared towards the consumer. Think about Color of the Year. The whole goal was to engage everyone around the world into a conversation about color and get people talking, and to help consumers understand the power of color and what color can do for them. So many of the different things, from calling out the colors for New York Fashion Week, we started with London Fashion Week, which went into what you used to talk about old school, the shelter publications, Now you're looking online and influencers and all those things, but it reaches the consumer. So it's an interesting business model. It's almost B2B to C, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned Colour of the Year, and it's always great fun, actually, looking at what that is. Mm-hmm. And then, I guess Ripple dissolved this, I think it was the most recent one, lots of opprobrium. Oh, it's part of this global conspiracy. They picked a kind of a shade of white, and what are they thinking? No. That must be very frustrating. But tell me a little bit about that. I guess there's the old truism about all publicity being good publicity. Not so sure whether was that frustrating, or does it just show how seriously people take colour?
I think it shows how seriously people take color. And if we go back, so Pantone Color Institute was started again with these consumer color preference studies, as we used to call them. And our roots, our foundation is in psychology. Yes, we moved into trend and all those things, but even when trends are happening, it's why is this happening, right? There's a psychology behind why we engage with the colors that we do, why we engage with anything that we do at the time that we do that. And color certainly is a reflection of what's taking place in the zeitgeist at a moment in time. So knowing the goal was always to engage people into a conversation around color. We feel like we are empowering people to have that conversation around color. Not everyone's going to like everything that we do, but this is a result of all the visual research that this global team does. Nobody goes in there with a goal of, I think I'm going to pick this color, I'm going into a guide. It is really a compilation across design of what we see happening. And it could be anywhere from 20 to 30 people that might be part of the process each year. Again, all cultures, all families of business, I would say. And this is what they do. I always liken them to color anthropologists that see light through the lens of color. And it really is about design more than anything else. What do we see showing up? I mean, sure, 20 years ago, or when we started this in 1999, you didn't have social media. You weren't looking at e-technologies.
What a beautiful time it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
And tell me, you touched there on anthropology, on how color makes us feel, and the Colour of the Year. What kinds of trends are you seeing in the demand for different colours? What is in the zeitgeist at the moment? Are you seeing any trends you think are applicable to fashion or to corporate life that are taking off?
I think we're living in this bifurcated world, and we've been living in this bifurcated world. On the one hand, you see the desire for these weightless, airy shades. This is not new. It's a progression. I think that's where Cloud Dancer almost fit into that feeling of lightness. I think it took it a little bit further, but this whole idea of disconnecting and radical rest and decompressing and calm and peacefulness, because there's so much going on around us. So I think you have that direction. A neutral white like Cloud Dancer fits in there, but it's also the pastels, these real whitened shades that are light and airy. You have this whole, and again, things that we've been seeing for a while, earthy and organic looks, and people wanting to feel close to nature, and things that feel authentic, things that we can trust, right? So you have all those real earth-based shades, digital shades that might fall into that. The whole idea of expressive, which has been around, bold and self-expression and bold and bright. So I think there's a plethora, it's not a word I usually use, of different things coming together. But if I think about one overarching too, it really is also about self-expression. On the one hand, you have people looking for shades that can take them through the seasons or can be intermixed easily within homes. So it's colors that are versatile, colors that mix well together. And it's not because you tell me it mixes well, it's because I tell you this is how I want to wear it. And I think one of the great things about Cloud Dancer, and one of the messages we were hoping to get out, was that this was a color that provided scaffolding to the entirety of the palette. You can use it on its own, but hey, mix and match this, especially when you think about prints. Use it as a background to help the color pop.
That was Vice President of the Pantone Color Institute, Laurie Pressman, in conversation with Monocle's Tom Edwards and Andrew Tuck. Grace, I like the idea that the Pantone team are called, or Laurie refers to them as colour anthropologists. It sort of sounds like your dream job, no?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because we talked about this before. You wanted to name cosmetics previously when you were younger. Is this actually the missed calling, working at Pantone?
Yeah, I really find it's a good way to make whimsical something that could just be conveyed through numbers.
This conversation also got me thinking recently about the Pantones of cities. I don't know if this is actually already a thing, but landing in Saudi Arabia, which we talked about a few weeks ago, the architecture, at least there, felt really familiar initially. Like the airport I landed at, I almost felt a sense of home because the reds and the browns of the desert there were really reminiscent of the reds and the browns of Western Australia.
Yeah, I feel like colour can really convey association. Like, for example, in London, I feel like there's a slight blue scale tinge that's cast over the city, and I really like it. And then when you go to Paris, it's a bit more like yellowy. And like it's one of the first things I notice when I get off the Eurostar on either end. It's like that shift in warmth of the colour around you. In movies from the 2000s, like I'm thinking A Good Year, amazing movie with Russell Crowe, another great rom-com. And all the scenes that are set in London, I swear they've just like washed it with blue.
With a blue. But we were talking about this in Paris the other week. It's also the sandstone in Paris immediately makes it feel a lot warmer than, say, in London, or at least in Marylebone where we're working, where there's a lot of red brick, which is really, really rich. But I guess as soon as it's kind of overcast, feels really, really heavy at the same time. Let's talk a little bit about Louis Kahn now. Born in Estonia, he was one of the 20th century's most prolific architects, creating buildings. I'm sure our listeners would have seen them. You've definitely seen images of them, but buildings like the Salk Institute in San Diego and the Bangladesh National Assembly building in Dhaka. It's sort of monumental architecture. It's all about playing with form. There's lots of geometric shapes kind of cut into his work, whether that's circles or semicircles or squares. And as a result, you kind of have light passing through and across these spaces. They all feel kind of otherworldly. Actually, one of my favourite examples of his work is our creative director, Richard Spencer Powell, says the lighting created or thrown through the space of the Kimball Art Museum by the undulating ceiling is some of the most beautiful lighting that is seen in a gallery space anywhere in the world. So, high praise from our very own Richard Spencer Powell. The reason I'm bringing this up, give us the background for why I'm starting to talk about Louis Kahn here.
I think it's funny you say that, actually, because he is like the architect's favourite architect often. There's a new Louis Kahn Foundation Centre in Tallinn on the horizon. And I was thinking, if you're an architect and you put Louis Kahn on this pedestal, you almost don't want to touch it, right? So who would have the hubris to think that they could tackle this commission? They've turned to design students. Isn't that amazing?
I think it makes perfect sense. I think, truly, there's a fearlessness to them, which I think is wonderful. So Monocle's Petri Burtsoff went along to look at some of the work. Let's hear from him now.
Louis Kahn was born on the island of Saaremaa in western Estonia, where he spent his formative years before moving to America with his family at the age of 5. There, he would emerge as one of the great modernist architects of the 20th century, who trained young architects at schools such as Yale and Princeton. To honor his legacy, the Louis Kahn Foundation has announced plans to build a center in Kuressaare, the town where Kahn was born. Architecture students from 3 leading universities, ETH Zurich, the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, and Tallinn University of Technology, were invited to explore what the future Louis Kahn Center might look like. I traveled to Tallinn to meet architect Mari-Liis Wunder of the Louis Kahn Estonia Foundation and began by asking her why it was important to involve students.
I think this is a really, really great chance to do a thinking exercise to really see what is possible, because the students are much more free spirits. And I think the collaboration was in a way random that exactly these schools are involved. But today, looking what is the result of how many variety there are, I think that was the top choice to have these three universities, top university from Europe, the ETH Zurich and the AHO. And about the working process, that has been extremely interesting, and I think for us as a organizer or the visionary who want to build the center, this opened up our perspectives a lot. And what it did show is also that it's a little bit like a Kahn principles, that these works reflect the multifunctionals and the variety and also the way of working. They were questioning, they were seeking, and then they proceed. So this is really not the final answer, but it's great. And of course, very interesting for us is that this is a very good exercise on the real site, because the site is big. It's located on the seaside, very beautiful, a little bit rough, and to see what you can do. So I think it's a very great fundament for our competition.
Some of the student proposals imagine quiet, almost monastic structures embedded in the landscape. Others are more robust and monumental, made from stone, earth, or reused industrial materials. The goal was never to imitate Kahn, yet Wunder sees the spirit of Kahn clearly reflected in the student proposals.
I think the spirit of Kahn you can see, and I think that is also interesting aspect, that these are all young, fresh architects, and I think today the world has changed, so we don't have a real cult one-star architect. If you go to young students, they're like, we are all equal, we work in communities, but here you can see, I think they were very much inspired by the experience of the room, the light and the materials, and that is something that I think connects them. That if you look at even these very abstract models, if you look at them you could be like, okay, wow, that could be a building, and that could be rather like a wow building than just an average.
Do you think that the students felt some pressure when they were, because designing for one of the great 20th century architects, this center, if I were an architecture student, I would be, my knees would be shaking a little bit.
Yes, that's a very good question, because I did ask it in Kuressaare when I met the students and when I met also the teachers. And what came out was very nice, that they were not afraid. It was more that it was like a tool. And also the teachers, that if they lost their idea, they could get into the books and get some inspiration, and then they had to get away from the spirit or to want to be calm, because you cannot really be. But I think it helped of many them to find some that, okay, I try this way because it is effective.
But what will the Louis Kahn Center look like, and what purpose will it serve? The core of the center will be a permanent exhibition showcasing Kahn's works, as well as a library archive dedicated to Kahn. There will also be exhibition spaces, a concert hall, and spaces for craft and experimentation. But nothing has been set in stone yet, and the organizers are keeping an open mind.
And I think the center itself has to also emphasize the spirituality and atmospheric aspects. And I think we are totally open for a new approach, no Kahnian elements, no on, but just knowing what he has been doing and knowing what we can see here, that these elements are really possible to have. Maybe it's like this very quiet intensity. If you think about like an architecture monastery, that it's somehow intense and quiet, and that is maybe a permanent place that you can focus and you can think deeper, that you slow down, that you go there, you take a trip, the boat, and it's not easy to get. And then if you are there, that there is this platform, and that this place also allows the art to meet, maybe different architecture, art, philosophy, to speak about it, and also these kind of unofficial discussions. And I think the people who would come to visit the center should get some of their inspiration through this quiet intensity, and I don't know what we also thought of as something we would like to adopt there, that it's not a museum or just center, that it has hand drawing part. We somehow vision that this, if you go there, there is somehow possible that you make sketches and you draw, you think, you build. There are workshops to this hand drawing that's slowly but surely dying out, to really make a space for it. And maybe this inspires.
And what about then the educational element of the center? Because Kahn, of course, having been a famous architect, was also acclaimed as one of the great professors of architecture of 20th century, and this teaching the art of architecture was a key element of his career. Is this something that you would like the center to take into account, so that it's not only a museum of his work but also has this sort of an educational element in it?
Yes, absolutely. This maybe I didn't come out before that well. We definitely see a very strong focus also on educational collaborations and to offer a place. And we are intending to also have residential apartments, or that you can really spend time there and live there, but to offer a space, a platform for the universities to really collaborate. And I think this is, again, extremely wonderful example that we have experienced here already, that both of the studios had to admit that they did not know, and there was a totally different unofficial relationship happening between studios, so they would learn from each other. And the AHO, the Oslo school, also said that they could see suddenly how much more material or know-how has the Zurich school, and how do they work, so they learn from each other. And I think if that would work, that there is suddenly another level of cooperation, and it's not just one student goes to another school, there's like a studio. So on a higher level there is a shift, or just the openness to work with these atmospheric hands, and I see a good chance for that also international, that students would be really interested, and schools to somehow get involved.
In the coming years, an international architecture competition will follow, in which the students' work will serve as an inspiration. This, perhaps as much as the building itself, will be the true homage to Kahn, who was always as much a scholar and teacher of architecture as he was its practitioner.
That was Monocle's Petri Bertsoff reporting from Tallinn on the Louis Kahn Foundation. You kind of touched on it before, Grace, but the idea of the only people being fearless enough to actually take this commission on are students. I mean, do you think this is a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think we need to give more power to the youth, as long as they're maybe supervised, because we have our very own former architecture student in the studio. Nic, can you tell us about some of your projects in your salad days of being a landscape architect?
It's kind of wild, because some of these weren't even when I was a student, but a young landscape architect. And I think I was left unsupervised a few times too often. And as a result, the people of Perth, Western Australia, have some pretty interesting interventions in some public spaces. There is this push and pull, because I remember I was working on Perth International Airport Terminal 1 forecourt. Huge project, super exciting project. I was maybe 1 or 2 years out of school, and out of university rather, and the firm I was working for had won the commission. I was invited along to the initial design charrette, And you know how they say that, like, in a brainstorm, no idea is a bad idea? I found out pretty quickly that that isn't true, and that, yeah, a second-year graduate can certainly have some bad ideas that get shut down very quickly. I wanted a playground in the forecourt, which I thought would have been really fun. You step up, I know, you just for our listeners, Grace is like, I can't even describe this face that you're pulling right now, but a mixture of disgust and confusion. I thought it would be a great idea for, as you come off a plane, maybe you want to stretch your legs a little bit, jump on a swing. It seemed like a really cool idea to me as a 22-year-old.
Wait, so a playground for adults?
And children as well. You know, burn off that energy. A little bit of both, big swings, small swings, seesaws, all sorts. The reality is when we started to kind of break down the process, it was like, well, often you're, as we talked about on last week's show, often you're rushing through an airport, and maybe the last thing you want is to have to negotiate a playground in the entry. And I think the other thing is, like, this is the gateway to Western Australia. So is that really the first thing that you want people to see? Like a playground that will eventually get tired and a little bit sticky and maybe isn't the most appealing thing as a welcome.
It sounds like a health and safety hazard as well, if I'm honest.
There's that. And I think there's also something to be said about, you know, architects, landscape architects so often are at their best later in their careers. And I think my attempts at it there probably prove that point. That is all for today's show. For more design stories, pick up a copy of Monocle magazine. Today's episode was produced and edited by Hassan Anderson and Elliot Greenfield. I'm Nic Manise.
I'm Grace Charlton.
Thanks for listening.